The Justice Department has charged former CIA officer John Kiriakou. There's no way I said that right. I've interviewed him and I still didn't say it right. Anyway, with the Espionage Act. Now, that's a very, very serious charge. Do you know that before President Obama, there's only been 3 instances of the United States government charging someone with the Espionage Act for giving sensitive information, as they claim this former CIA officer did? Now, you want to know how many Obama has done? 6 different cases. Now, this is especially ironic because President Obama promised to be a friend to whistleblowers and transparency. If there's something wrong in our government and you report it, he was going to help you. Does it look like he's helping you? So what did this guy do? Well, he talked about how we waterboarded people and how it was torture. Now, he thought it was justified. He even did an interview on 60 Minutes and said that he thought it worked. He underplayed the amount of torture that we did, but he happened to call it torture. Now, they looked at that, and the CIA did not like that. Furthermore, there was a 2008 New York Times story, which they believe he's the source of, but they haven't proved it yet. And so they say, well, okay, good, Espionage Act. I guess it's one of the toughest laws we have, and we're coming to get you under this basis. Because here's the great irony of that. If you actually did the waterboarding, if you did the torture, you got no punishment whatsoever. Now, President Obama claimed it was torture and ridiculous, and he says he stopped it. Not just ridiculous, it was horrible, right? It was torture. But if you did it, you go away scot-free. The president will not look backward, he'll only look forward. If you reported the waterboarding and the torture, Espionage Act. But wait a minute, I thought you were going to look backward. Oh, it's to protect the CIA's ass, if it's to protect the ass of the Bush administration and Dick Cheney that ordered that torture, well, then of course you'll look backward, and in fact you'll look very deep into it. You know who else they thought about charging? The defense lawyers at Guantanamo Bay. Our whole system is based on an adversarial system where somebody gets a defense. Now, one of the defense tactics was to look at the interrogators and try to determine who they were so they could bring them into court and say, use them as witnesses. Because the guys who are in Guantanamo Bay face execution. And they say, if they're going to get executed, we should be able to call up the witnesses. And what do? Obviously for intimidation purposes, Eric Holder, head of the Justice Department, said, well, let's look into their lawyers and see if we can intimidate them and say, hey, maybe we'll charge you with whatever kind of laws that we can find to go after you. Mercifully, they have decided that under the American system, we're not going to charge the defense attorneys for being defense attorneys. But when it comes to the former CIA officer, no, it's time for vengeance. Meanwhile, you remember Jose Padilla, who was one of the guys who was tortured? He was a U.S. citizen. He was locked up in the U.S. for over 3 years, no charges. Now, I flipped out over that at the time on the Young Turks because I said, if they can do it to Jose Padilla, they could do it to anybody. He was here in the United States, and he's a U.S. citizen. Well, the Fourth Circuit just ruled, yes, they could do it to anybody. Jose Padilla's case against Don Rumsfeld is thrown out. We're not even going to consider whether you were tortured. They did sensory deprivation, etc. And forget the torture part of it. They just didn't even give you a hearing for over 3 years. Well, hey, listen, you got no right suing Rumsfeld. How dare you? By the way, the people who defended Rumsfeld there, of course, Eric Holder and the Justice Department. We're not going to look backward to see if they did anything wrong. They arrest and indefinitely detain U.S. citizens without charges. Who cares? We just signed that into law just a little while ago. Yeah, of course we're going to protect the Bush administration. Of course we're going to protect Rumsfeld. But if you're someone who's actually blowing the whistle on Rumsfeld, we're coming to get you. Well, where's the logic in that? Where's the fairness in that? There isn't any. They look backward when they want to protect the Bush administration, and they look forward when they want to protect the Bush administration. It's a good thing we voted for change. Now, if all of that weren't bad enough, Glenn Greenwald points out a third hypocrisy here. There was an incident in Haditha, Iraq in 2005, where Marine Staff Sergeant Frank Wuterich told his soldiers, told his Marines, I should say, shoot first, ask questions later. That's a direct quote. And they did. They killed 24 unarmed civilians. It's a massacre, right? Well, don't worry. They've really dealt with him. They just struck a plea deal with him where he might get up to 3 months in prison. Ooh. Maybe up to 3 months in prison. 24 unarmed civilians dead, and it's because they told the Marines there, shoot first, don't bother to look to see if there are civilians. So if you kill 24 people, you might get up to 3 months. And by the way, let's be fair here. He could also lose 2/3 of his pay, and he could be demoted to private. Wow, we really got him. But if you tell the world about our crimes, our transgressions, our problems, then we're coming to get you. Espionage Act. Mazahir Hussein has a great quote on this. Glenn Greenwald pointed that out as well. He said, quote, Bradley Manning should have really considered committing some war crimes instead of exposing them. Because, I mean, no truer words have ever been spoken. And what does that say about our U.S. government? Because if Bradley Manning had tortured somebody, watered somebody, maybe even shot unarmed civilians, had committed war crimes, we would do our utmost to protect him. Because he exposed war crimes, we're doing our utmost to prosecute him and perhaps put him in jail for the rest of his life. What happened in the United States of America? And what happened to that change we voted for?